I've been behind the scenes helping YouTubers with a few thousand subscribers all the way up to those with a few million subscribers. They always ask me the same question, which is how do I make my channel get more views? The reason that I get asked is because I've helped multiple people make 1 million, 7 million, and even 8 million view videos. So what I want to tell you first is YouTube Economics 101, because understanding how YouTube views sort of work on the platform really helps you understand what you need to optimize in order to make your videos better. First of all, you start off with the TAM, which is called the total addressable market. And basically that's a combination of all the people that could possibly watch your video, all the people that exist on the platform and even off the platform. You have to understand that YouTube is kind of like a marketplace. So supply-demand asymmetry is this concept that if there's not a lot of videos that supply the particular demand of a viewer, then those videos will tend to have a greater likelihood of getting more views to those videos. So uniqueness on the platform actually does matter, and the amount of sheer demand for a topic also matters. Now, these are big, broad concepts to think about, but we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty details too, because that's really important. And the first thing that you think about when you think of YouTubers is think about clickability. You think about the idea, the title and the thumbnail, and that packaging really matters, because if no one clicks on your video in the first place, well, it doesn't even matter how good your video is, it's not going to get views basically. I think clickability is also determined by viewer intent. So for example, if you have a channel that has one video about plants and then one video about entrepreneurship and then another video about buildings or architecture, then that channel can feel very random. So it's very hard for those sorts of channels to carry consistent viewers between videos. And so understanding the viewer intent when they come onto your channel and even when they're watching your video is really, really important. And then we come to one of my favorite parts, which is about retention and satisfaction. In other words, now that someone has come onto your video, they've decided, I'm curious enough to click this thing, you have to then hit them with good script writing, good editing, and then a good presentation. And I encapsulate that as storytelling. We are going to go through all of these different squares and talk about the principles about how you put this into practice. And by the way, if you wanted to get the written version of this entire presentation, you can go to storytellingprimer.com, and this is the free 5-day email course version of this video, basically. You'll also be subscribed to the YouTube newsletter that I'm writing, and I think that will be super helpful for you if you're a YouTuber wanting to grow your channel. Now, let's talk about the viral validator framework, which is a way to consistently increase the chances that your videos will get more views. You take an idea for a video, you spend many hours of it, and then you release it into the world. It's a very happy moment for YouTubers. But the views that you hope for, sometimes they just don't come. Here, I want to help you solve that particular problem. And I think you need to understand that videos in YouTube perform in this sort of four-way golden intersection. And this is something that's helpful for, tens of thousands of views, hundreds of thousands, or even 1 million views. Really, there's this supply-demand asymmetry thing that I mentioned before. If there's a lot of videos on the platform about the same topic that you're about to make, especially if you're trying to emulate the style of someone else, then the question is, why do people want to watch your video as opposed to those videos? So generally speaking, if you're making something that's actually pretty unique, but also in demand, that's a really, really good position to be in for a video. Then the title and the thumbnail are the things that you need for people to actually come and click on your video. And finally, storytelling is the thing that increases retention, which is really, really important in the YouTube algorithm, but also just important for viewer satisfaction. So if you get the intersection of all these things, then you get this, sweet spot. I've called it a 1 million view sweet spot, but really it's just a sweet spot for getting lots and lots of views. If you think about everything that's important, the idea is the thing that determines a lot of that stuff. Why are ideas so important? And the reason is because the idea itself is the thing that leads to the view potential, it leads to the title and thumbnail, and then leads to the retention and satisfaction. Or at the very least, it creates a basis for all of these things, and your video relies on the intersection of these things to do well. So that's why your idea and getting ideas right is so important for you as a YouTuber. So your next question, naturally, will be, what makes a strong idea? And the first thing is relevance. Is there already proof that people care? This is New Jeans, for example. New Jeans, if you don't know, is a K-pop group which is super duper duper popular. They have 119 million views in the past 28 days for their music videos. The channel I'm about to show you has 27.7k subscribers. And of course, that's not a small amount by any means. That's very, very good. But you can see that on this particular channel, the most popular video of recent is why New Jeans' beats are pure genius. And to be fair, the last 5 videos are also all about New Jeans, but for someone that's never heard of this music producer before, I think that a title and thumbnail like this, and especially the topic of New Jeans, really makes for a strong idea. Because people are interested in New Jeans as a whole, it means that there's a particular kind of relevance that this can bring as opposed to making a generic video about how to make music production beats. And so when you really think about it, there's this creator, content, viewer intersection. From a creator to content perspective, it's good if you're taking advantage of your unfair advantages. For example, what makes you special as a person, or even if it's not even particularly anything that you may be skilled at, maybe you're just starting YouTube for the first time, but you don't have any particular skills, then what is it that you're passionate about and can talk about a lot? Because chances are, if you're passionate about a topic, then you probably know more about that topic than a lot of other people, and a lot of people would be interested on YouTube to listen to that. YouTube in that sense is slightly different from real life, because when people come to you on YouTube, they're really interested in whatever topic you're talking about by virtue of you talking about it and them arriving there. Whereas in real life, you have to cater what you talk about to the person and their interests. So that's why YouTube is super great for when you want to nerd out about stuff in depth, because your video will find its people. If you hit this intersection of your creator that likes the content you're creating, and then the content that you're creating fits the viewer, then you get this happy section in the middle. How delightful. Now, we've gone off on a little bit of a tangent, so I want to bring it back to what is it that makes ideas so strong? And I think partial knowledge is really important. What I mean by that is a viewer that sees your video and they think they know everything that's going to happen in your video, even if they don't know what's actually going to happen, they will be interested in clicking in that video because there's no tension, there's no curiosity gap there. So you got to think, is there a way to make the idea feel like it's something the viewer doesn't already know? Partial knowledge. Maybe that's something like this, for example, by Veritasium, who's a fantastic YouTuber. This has 6.1 million views in 3 weeks, which is crazy. And it's how do QR codes work? You know what a QR code is. How do they work? I don't know how they work. And something that Veritasium has done though, is like he hasn't just put a QR code on the thumbnail, which might be the temptation, but he's made this Go board full of Go pieces and arranged that into a QR code, which elevates even more this idea, oh, I really don't know, what is he going to do with this physical thing? There's a certain type of showmanship that I think is really important for titles and thumbnails. The next part of a strong idea is high visual interestingness, because the idea itself dictates the visuals, not just of the thumbnail, but also of the entire video. If you've got a video that is talking about OMG Airbnbs, it means that you have a lot of visual material there to work with, because you can literally create a list of Airbnbs, which make you go, wow. And that's why this video has 25 million views in 7 months. I mean, it's not the only reason, but that's a big reason why it does so successfully. Similarly, this video, again by Ryan Trahan, about I tried every Airbnb category from farms to boats, it's just gonna be visually nice, those individual scenes when you go record. Being able to understand though that you've got visual material that you can put into your video and having a good idea of what that visual looks like beforehand, that's going to be really important for good ideas. The next component of a strong idea is that there's payoffs for each segment, and it's important that your video rewards someone emotionally in some way. Even if it's an educational video, insight might be an emotional payoff for that person. I think something that separates a lot of videos that have maybe 100,000 views to videos that have 1 million views is that there's contrast between segments. People tend to get bored of the same thing quite quickly. So it's important to visually or emotionally or audiographically make contrast between these segments, and that keeps people interested for longer. The next really important part, and this is like super important because from a storytelling perspective, this is something that comes from the idea itself. There's these unanswered questions that have to be resolved over the course of the video. And I talk about this more in my storytelling course, which you can go to if you want to. But you have this big loop, and that big loop is a big question. And then you have these smaller loops, which are smaller questions in the video. But what happens is that if you have any point in time in a video where people don't have a remaining question in their mind, in other words, they feel like everything is resolved, then people are very likely to drop off a video, and you're very likely to get retention dips if you don't have that ongoing question. People think that this comes from the script writing, and to some degree it does, but I think more of it comes from the actual idea of the video itself. A good idea sets up the sort of basis for a lot of those questions that the viewer wants to answer. A strong idea usually has a climax, ideally near the end of a video, with a thing called staircasing before that. Staircasing is this idea that as your video is going on and on, you basically need to have progression throughout a video. If you have a climax at the end of it, that's really great. Again, I'll talk about that more in the course. And the last part of a strong idea is that it's broadly appealing. Basically, videos, if they only have a very, very niche name and they appeal to a small audience, it's going to get a small number of views. But if it has a very large potential audience, then it has the potential to get a large number of views. So we talked about 8 different concepts for making a strong idea, but now the question comes of how do you actually make that strong idea? The first step is to generate lots and lots and lots of ideas. And the way to generate those ideas is to create variants of videos that have already performed well for you. You can take an idea that's worked well in another niche and then make a version that works for your niche. You can use what's done well on other social media platforms. So for example, if there's a banger tweet that's gotten thousands of views, or even a really, really good Reddit post, then that might be a basis for a video. And then finally, I think using ChatGPT to expand on your ideas just helps you get more surface area, and maybe 100 ideas of those from ChatGPT will be pretty bad, but some of them will be pretty good. The aim here is just to maximize the quantity of generation, because in the next step, you're going to use filters to actually pick out the best ones. The reason that we separate these two things is because the part of your brain that helps you to be creative and generate lots of ideas is different from the part of the brain that lets you think, okay, is this a good idea or not? For some reason, when you're trying to combine those two things together and you're just trying to think, what is the best idea? Let me try to think of as many best ideas as I can. That is not the way that it typically works, or it's very, very hard to do that. Instead, it's better to just let one part of your brain kind of go crazy with generation first. And then afterwards, after you've had this creative spurt, to look at your mess of ideas that you made and then pick out the best ones from there. So you're using two different brains, and it's a lot easier and a lot more fun to do it that way. So when you are filtering things, there's a few different things that you can do. The first is to think about external validation. In other words, is there evidence to say that this idea will perform well? That might be through it performing well on another person's videos. That might be through outlier theory, which I'll talk about later. But chances are, if you've come up with an idea, someone has likely done some version of it before on YouTube. And it's really kind of useful to be like, well, I'm not going to go down that area because this person, they did an amazing video and so they got 10,000 views. So even though I make a video like this, it might not do that well. Or vice versa. This person has done a video that's gotten bajillions of views. Maybe if I try something similar or make a variation of that concept, it could potentially do well. So for example, billionaire house tier list is something that anyone can watch. You don't really have to have any prior knowledge for it. It's not aimed at one particular niche audience. So that's why you can get 3.6 million views on it. However, this video, how to use Nate and automation for beginners, which is a very, very useful thing for people like us who are into AI and stuff. Even the best edited video in the niche will probably only get a small number of views just because the topic itself doesn't have that many people that are interested in that topic. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. If you're a business, for example, and your target audience is someone that is, in that super specific niche, that can be great for your business and lead generation. But if you're wanting lots and lots of views, then you want something that appeals to a lot of people. really thinking about who your audience is going to be important. It may not be a bad thing to get low views, like get a really specific audience. It just depends on your goals for your video. The next part of filtering your ideas is internal validation. In other words, would I watch this video if it was to come up on my feed? You kind of develop gut feelings as you get more and more experience in YouTube, and those gut feelings are really helpful because they let you innovate. They let you ignore data to some degree and make you think, well, look, there's nothing to suggest that this video should perform well. I'm going to make it anyway and see if it performs well. And exploring uncharted territory is this idea of blue sky or blue ocean thinking. And personally, I actually feel that that side of YouTube is, very inspiring, because by making ideas that haven't been made before, you really have a lot of potential with your channel, and also with how people understand you and your place on the platform. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you really need to start to think, how do I make something that doesn't exist yet? And filter number 3 is, does this match the viewer intent for the channel? I want to give a specific example of this. This is WAP, who's a great Genshin Impact YouTuber. Genshin Impact is an anime game, I guess, to keep it very short. And you can see that here he's obviously got a lot of Genshin Impact content, and the times that he's made content outside of Genshin Impact, which are these 2 games, then it's just not performed as well. It's got 14,000 views and 78,000 views, as opposed to all the Genshin Impact videos that were getting 296,000 views or 167,000 views. Now, that might be totally fine. Like, if you don't want to get lots of views and you want to shift your content in a different direction, then that's something that is important for that creator content fit. Because sometimes what happens is that you might get bored of the content that you're making. And it's really important, I think, in the long term, for long-term happiness and long-term success, to find things that you do feel like you want to keep growing in. I think it's kind of a sad thing if someone was to just do the same thing over and over and over, just for money or just for whatever, especially if you have the skill to be able to explore something that's uncharted and new and exciting. If you genuinely want to, you think, okay, I'm really done with this channel, I know it has a lot of subscribers. This is actually a real case that's happened a lot of times with YouTubers that I've talked with, and they've been scared to jump from one channel to another channel because they're like, I really don't want to get rid of these subscribers, and I don't want to make something different because, what if I make a channel that can't get to the same level as my previous channel? But I think that almost any time that someone has been able to make a really good channel once, they have the skill to be able to make that channel in a different niche again. It may take a while, and it does take a lot of practice and a lot of videos, but I've really seen that happen quite a few times now. This is a bit of a digression, but one of the great conversations I had at VidSummit, which is a YouTube conference, was with a creator that created for a particular type of video game, but they, sort of weren't really happy. They were kind of interested in going to a different niche. And I just said, well, just try it, make a new channel, see what happens. It'll be fun. Worst comes to worst is that you'll explore it, you may hate it, and then you go back and feel like, okay, well, I feel happier with my old channel, or you may end up loving it and doing really well on it. What ended up happening was they loved it and they did really well with it. They actually grew really, really fast. And they were very grateful to me because I said that a year before I saw them again at VidSummit 2024. That was really fun. I love it when I tell someone something and then they go and implement it, and then it makes their life better. That's a very satisfying feeling. Now, something that's really, really useful in terms of other filters is that you can try using Outlier strategy. This is the concept that you look at a video on a channel, and then that video is performing way better than the other videos on that channel. Or that you have a relatively small channel, maybe that's 10,000 or 20,000 subscribers, and then that channel has a video that's an absolute banger. It's got 500,000 views, and you're just like, whoa, how did this tiny channel make such a banger video? So this concept is called Outliers, and one tool you can use is 1 out of 10, created by a friend called Richard. Amazing, they have a great team, fantastic guys, and they really know what they're doing. Or you can look at ViewStats, and ViewStats is by Chucky and Mr. Beast, and that's a really, really good platform as well. I'm friends with both Richard of 1 out of 10 and Chucky of ViewStats, so personally, I think that they're both fantastic platforms. Now, some useful settings for Outlier research. I always think about when was a video published, and I try to filter down by something that was more recent. I didn't do the last 12 months because the whole reason that you're doing Outlier research in the first place, you're kind of trying to see what the flow of views are in videos. So supply and demand changes over time a little bit. That's why I think more recent Outliers sort of gives you a better description of what's happening right now on the platform. Older videos, of course, can reveal some cool bangers. In terms of view count, I think that I tend to prefer videos that have over 100,000 views as a minimum, just because you want a video that has a high ceiling of views. If you're wanting like lower views and stuff, and you don't mind just getting 50k views, or that might sound amazing for some people, then that's fine. But I think if you're aiming for a few 100,000 views, which is usually kind of what I would think about, or even a few million, then thinking about videos that have proven there's a higher ceiling is going to be useful. Do you absolutely need a tool? No, I don't think you always need a tool. I think they're very, very helpful, and I think that they're fantastic for doing research very, very quickly. But really, the way I used to do it was I used to just like YouTube search, and then I would try to search something like productivity or something like note-taking software, and then just like grab the top 5 or 10 YouTubers on that search, look at all their channels, and then like eyeball it like that. So that's kind of the manual way to do it. It's actually still a useful exercise, and actually I think that does have one benefit of giving you a more holistic understanding of how a niche is doing and what is working inside of a niche. Tools are fantastic, certainly, but if you're someone that's like short on cash, or you just want to like try to do it the hardcore way just for the learning purposes, then certainly you can just search on YouTube and go through that way too. Okay, seamless transition. Step 3 is talking about tests. Basically, the idea of tests is that you can have lots and lots of video ideas, but they may not all necessarily fulfill the criteria for a banger video. So with these tests, you'll put the videos on the left-hand side, and then you'll put the tests in individual columns. If the video passes a test, then it scores a 1. If not, it gets 0, and then you add the scores at the end, and then videos that have a high score have a better chance of performing well. So in the first column of your Excel spreadsheet, for example, you might fill the visual test. Now, this is a test where it's like, can you create a fantastic title and thumbnail before you make the video? Because if no one clicks on your video, then there's no point in even trying to make the video in the first place. So the weaker the thumbnail and title combination is, then the weaker the chance that you're going to have a successful video. So the next really important test is the breadth test. So if you have a casual viewer and they're not deeply experienced with the topic of your video, is that a video that they can still watch? The broader your topic is, then the bigger the potential pool of people that can watch your video. So if your video happens to have a fantastic title and thumbnail and storytelling, then it just becomes a matter of like, especially when you get to the multi-million view videos, then it's like, okay, how many people physically in this pool of people can I reach? The broader your topic, in other words, the more people that can understand your topic, then the more people that you have physically available to be able to watch your video and possibly enjoy it. The next test though, which is a bit paradoxical to the breadth test, is the relevance test. Is this idea relevant to a specific person? And especially in educational videos, the reason you want to solve a particular pain point is that if someone is searching for that pain point, if that person sees your video pop up on their feed and then it's like, oh wow, like this is the exact thing that I was thinking about, then that's something that's very valuable for you because they will click on your video. So just ask yourself, is this video relevant to a specific person? Which brings me, funnily enough, to my next point, the specificity test. Now, this test is the idea specific enough to look real? In this particular thumbnail, I built a robot that plays FPS games. This robot is very, very real looking. So if you think about why clickbait doesn't work, if it's too unbelievable, then it's just because people have like an allergy to clickbait. They won't click on something that looks too unbelievable. So it's really, really important to try to increase the perceived value of the thumbnail by being more specific about the stuff inside of it. Another example here is by Dabi. He made the Udi, which is an Australian company that sells like a very, very warm jumper that you can sleep in. And he wrote this Shopify tutorial for beginners, 2024. And just by having something like a specific number, the 558,692, that makes it more interesting to click on than, for example, someone that just had some graph that went up and to the right, which doesn't mean anything in particular. So that's what I mean by specificity. If you can have stuff that's more specific in your thumbnail or packaging, that could be something that is more
going to help your YouTube videos do a bit better, just in terms of the packaging. Now, the helpfulness test. This test is, how useful is this video? The bigger the promise to someone, then the more likely they are to click on the video. So for example, if you have a video that talks about how to become a millionaire, that's probably going to do better than a video that just teaches someone how to make their first $100. Although, that said, both of those situations might be okay. The helpfulness test particularly comes into play when you have a complete guide to something. For example, my video with 1 million views, it's Obsidian as a second brain, the ultimate tutorial. And the reason is because this is a 2-hour long tutorial. It's like, you can see from the timestamp, which also kind of helps with the packaging, I guess, that this is going to be a super duper helpful video, and it is definitely one of the most comprehensive on Obsidian, that very specific piece of note-taking software. Now, if you are trying to create something super duper helpful, you want to back that up by actually having stuff that's helpful in the video, because what will happen is that if you just make a really long video and you ramble on for ages and ages about nothing, people will comment on it, and then your video will get a lot of negativity surrounding it, as I've seen for other people. So the next test is the water cooler test. Now, can viewers explain your video in one sentence, like they're talking about it in a conversation over the water cooler? This kind of idea is just for seeing how simple the idea is, because if it's too complex, then people will just skip that. If you can imagine someone talking about your video and just saying to someone, oh, look, I watched this video where this guy built a robot cat and it was really interesting. That's a very, very easy sentence to say. It flows naturally. Or something like, oh, I saw Mr. Beast go and crush a Lamborghini. That's an interesting phrase in itself that gets people interested. The reason that you use this test is because if something takes more than a few sentences to explain, then it's just more difficult to spread by word of mouth. Where if it's just something that can be explained in 1 sentence or 2 sentences, then this is an idea that is simple enough to stay in people's minds and also be spread around quite easily too. So that's a bunch of really useful tests, and now that you've generated great ideas, filtered them down, and tested them to reduce them down even further, what's next? And that leads us to the second section of our video, which is the click magnet framework for making banger thumbnails. The whole point of this section is to help to increase the clickability of your videos, which increases views. I'll put the thumbnail video here when I upload it. Feel free to go to creatorside.io for the latest and greatest in YouTube strategy. This has been Dabi's YouTube analysis. I'll catch you in the next video. Make sure to subscribe.